For nearly 3 months, Rowan Cain had ignored every invitation his friend sent him. Coffee after work, weekend barbecues, trivia nights. He always found an excuse. It wasn't that he disliked people. He was just worn down from trying to keep life from falling apart after his wife died. Between raising his 8-year-old son Owen and holding on to a demanding project management job, he barely had the energy to fold the laundry before midnight. Then his friend Nora stopped asking him to go out. Instead, she invited him to dinner. He didn't realize until he walked in that it was a blind date, and he never could have guessed who would end up sitting across from him before the night was over. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner 2.0. The restaurant sat on a quiet corner in Portland's Pearl District. Rain had stopped less than an hour earlier, and the sidewalk still shone under the streetlights. Rowan almost turned around after he parked. He checked his phone twice, hoping Nora would text to say something had come up. Nothing. Inside, the smell of fresh bread and roasted garlic met him at the door. Nora stood near the entrance, waving with the kind of energy only she could summon after a 10-hour nursing shift. "You actually came." "I almost didn't." "I know." Before Rowan could ask why 3 chairs surrounded the table instead of 2, a woman stood up from her seat. "This is my sister Mara." Mara hadn't dressed to impress anyone. A dark green sweater, simple earrings, hair tied loosely behind her shoulders. She looked exactly as uncomfortable as Rowan felt. "So," Rowan said, and gave Nora an awkward smile. "This wasn't just dinner." "No?" Nora admitted without a trace of shame. "You both needed someone to push you out of the house." Rowan sighed. "I should have known. You'll thank me later." She excused herself almost at once, claiming she'd promised to meet another friend nearby, though Rowan suspected that friend didn't exist. Now it was just him and Mara. For almost a minute, neither of them reached for a menu. Finally, Mara smiled first. "Want to know a secret?" "Please." "I almost canceled too." That made Rowan laugh harder than he expected. The tension in his shoulders loosened. Conversation came slowly, then easily. Mara restored historic buildings for a local architecture firm. She loved old bookstores, hated loud restaurants, and confessed she still burned grilled cheese sandwiches, even when she followed the recipe to the letter. Rowan admitted his son thought frozen waffles counted as gourmet cooking whenever he added strawberries. She laughed, not politely, for real. It had been a long time since someone laughed at something Rowan said instead of laughing to make him feel better. The waiter brought water, then appetizers. For the first time in months, Rowan stopped checking the clock. Meanwhile, back at the office, life had been less peaceful. His department had been under pressure since the company merged with a regional construction group. Deadlines shifted every week. Budgets shrank. At the center of all of it stood Celeste Harrow, vice president of operations, and Rowan's boss. She wasn't cruel. She just expected perfection from people who barely had the hours to finish ordinary work. Her emails arrived before sunrise. Meetings appeared without warning. She remembered every missed detail and rarely noticed the overtime. Even so, Rowan respected her. She worked harder than anyone. He only wished she remembered that the rest of them had families waiting at home. Earlier that same afternoon, Rowan had left work 15 minutes early. Not because he wanted to. Owen's school counselor had called. His son had gotten into a fight. Nothing serious. Another boy had joked that mothers who died forgot their children, and Owen had punched him. Rowan spent an hour with the teachers and another calming Owen down before he could bring him home. He'd barely made it to dinner. He hadn't told Mara any of that yet. Instead, they talked about favorite parks rainy weekends, the movies that somehow became comfort traditions. Then Mara noticed something. "You keep looking toward the door." "I do, a little. Habit." "You expecting someone?" "No." He hesitated. "I guess I'm always expecting work." She understood the answer without asking anything more. The waiter had just set their entrees down when the front door opened. Rowan glanced up out of reflex and his stomach dropped. Walking into the restaurant was Celeste. She wore the same navy suit from the afternoon meeting, though the jacket now hung over one arm. Beside her walked an executive Rowan recognized from headquarters. They'd clearly planned dinner after a visit to a nearby client. Celeste scanned the room as she talked, then looked straight at Rowan. Recognition flickered across her face. She gave a polite nod. He nodded back and hoped that was the end of it. It wasn't. The hostess stopped beside their table, apologetic. A private party had booked the back half of the room, she explained quietly, and the wait for a new table would run 20 minutes. Would they mind if she seated these two guests here in the meantime? Rowan froze. Mara looked surprised. Before either of them answered, Celeste spoke. If it's inconvenient, we'll wait outside. And that was the moment Rowan decided not to let the evening happen to him. He'd spent 3 months letting things happen to him. He stood, pulled out the chair beside his own, and said, "There's plenty of room, please." He caught Mara's eye as he said it, checking, and she nodded warm about it. "We insist." Within moments, 2 more place settings appeared. Rowan found himself sharing a blind date with his boss, and nobody had planned for that. The first few minutes were painfully quiet. Forks scraped plates, glasses clinked. The executive beside Celeste talked mostly about airport delays. Mara focused on her meal. Rowan cut his salmon into unnecessarily small pieces. Finally, Celeste broke the silence. "I didn't know you knew this place." "I don't," Rowan admitted. "A friend arranged dinner." "A surprise?" "You could say that." Mara smiled. It was definitely a surprise. And for the first time, Rowan saw something he didn't expect. Celeste smiled too. Not the professional smile from conference rooms. A real one. It vanished almost immediately, but it had been there. Conversation slowly loosened. Not about work, about Portland traffic, neighborhood bakeries, the old downtown theater everyone insisted needed saving. Then Celeste surprised the table again by mentioning that she volunteered twice a month at a community literacy program. Rowan blinked. "You teach reading." "I listen," she corrected. "Children usually teach themselves once someone gives them enough time." That sentence stayed with him. It didn't sound like the woman who sent emails at 5:17 every morning. It sounded like someone else entirely. Then Rowan's phone buzzed. He apologized before he checked it. The message came from Owen's sitter. "Don't panic. Owen has a slight fever. I gave him medicine. He's resting." Rowan stood. "I'm sorry." Mara looked concerned. "Everything okay?" "My son isn't feeling well. I have to go." He reached for his wallet. Celeste stood too. "Family comes first." Those 3 words surprised Rowan more than seeing her walk through the door had. He thanked Mara for dinner. "Go be with your little boy," she said gently. As Rowan hurried toward the exit, he couldn't shake the feeling that the strange evening wasn't over. It had only just begun. He reached Owen's room less than 20 minutes later. The fever wasn't dangerously high, but his son looked pale, wrapped in his favorite blue blanket, an old space cartoon playing low on the television. "I'm okay," Owen said before Rowan even asked. "You don't look okay." "I mostly just wanted you to come home." That honest little sentence carried more weight than the fever. Rowan sat beside him until he drifted off, then thanked Mrs. Alvarez, the retired neighbor who had been babysitting for almost 2 years. She refused extra money as always and reminded him to keep Owen hydrated through the night. By Saturday morning, the fever had already started to break. Life slid back into its ordinary rhythm. Laundry, groceries, soccer practice, work emails, while pasta boiled on the stove. The dinner felt almost unreal until Nora called Sunday afternoon. So what? Don't pretend you don't know." Rowan laughed. It was nice. Nice isn't enough information. I liked her, and my boss somehow ended up at our table. There was silence. Then Nora burst out laughing so hard, Rowan had to pull the phone from his ear. "I leave you alone for one dinner and you turn it into an office meeting." It wasn't exactly planned. No kidding. When she finally stopped laughing, she got serious. "Mara said you left because your son was sick. She hopes you'll call." Rowan looked toward Owen, who was building a cardboard rocket in the living room. "I think I'd like that." Monday came faster than he wanted. The office looked exactly the same. Coffee cups, blueprints, people pretending they weren't tired. Only Rowan felt different because he couldn't stop wondering whether Friday night had made everything awkward. At 10, a calendar invitation appeared. Meeting with Celeste Harrow, no explanation. His stomach tightened and he replayed every unfinished report in his head on the walk to her office. "Come in," she said without looking up. Her office overlooked the river. Everything on her desk sat perfectly aligned except one framed drawing done in bright crayon, 2 people holding hands beside a very crooked house. Rowan had never noticed it before. Celeste finally looked up. "How's your son?" The question caught him off guard. Much better, thank you. I'm glad. She closed her laptop. I wanted to apologize. For what? I realized something on Friday. I've been scheduling evening meetings without asking whether people could actually attend them. I assumed everyone could rearrange their lives the way I always have. She glanced at the crayon drawing. That wasn't fair. Rowan hesitated, then decided honesty had worked once already that week. It's not just the evenings, he said carefully. It's the 5 a.m. emails. People answer them at breakfast, standing over their kids' cereal. If we moved the standing meetings into office hours, half my team would stop feeling like they're failing at home. Celeste didn't flinch. She reached for a notepad. Walk me through it. For 15 minutes, they went through the schedule, marking which meetings could become video calls and which could happen during regular hours. It wasn't dramatic. No policy changed overnight, just small practical adjustments, most of them his. My daughter drew that when she was 6, Celeste said as he stood to leave, nodding at the picture. I missed her science fair once for a client presentation. The presentation's been forgotten. The science fair hasn't. There was no self-pity in it, only honesty. When you left Friday without apologizing for being a father first, it reminded me of choices I wish I'd made differently. The weeks that followed felt lighter. People still worked hard, but they stopped looking guilty for leaving on time to pick up children or check on aging parents. One Thursday, Rowan got a text from Mara. Still terrible at making grilled cheese. Need professional advice. He smiled. I'm only qualified to supervise frozen waffles. Good enough. Dinner Saturday. This time it wasn't a blind date. They met at a neighborhood cafe instead of an expensive restaurant, and the conversation came easily. Mara asked thoughtful questions and never pushed when he wasn't ready to answer. She spoke openly about her own divorce and how, starting over in her late 30s, had felt lonely in ways she never expected. Neither of them tried to impress the other, which was probably why they enjoyed each other so much. A month later, she met Owen. Rowan had worried it would feel awkward. Instead, Owen spent 20 minutes explaining every planet in the solar system, while Mara listened as though it were the most important presentation in the world. I think Saturn is still my favorite, she said when he finished. Owen grinned. Mine too. On the drive home, he asked quietly, Can she come over again? Rowan smiled, eyes on the road. I hope so. Life didn't suddenly turn perfect. Owen still missed his mother. Some nights, Rowan still stood in the kitchen, wondering how one person could feel grateful and exhausted at the same time. Deadlines still piled up. The washing machine still broke at the worst possible moment. But something had shifted. Not because life got easier. Because he no longer felt he had to carry every burden alone. Several months after that dinner, the company organized a volunteer day at the same literacy center Celeste had mentioned. Rowan signed up with a few coworkers. He watched his boss kneel beside a nervous little boy struggling through a picture book. She never rushed him, never corrected him impatiently. She just waited the same patience she'd described that night in the restaurant. Driving home, Rowan thought about how people so often knew each other only through their busiest moments. He had known Celeste only as the executive sending impossible deadlines. She had known him only as another project manager keeping schedules on track. Neither had seen the fuller picture until chance seated them at the same table. A few weeks before Christmas, Nora invited everyone over. This time there were no surprises waiting. Just homemade soup, too much dessert, children running down the hallway, and adults arguing over board game rules. At one point, Nora leaned toward Rowan and whispered, Still think setting you up was a terrible idea. He looked across the room. Mara and Owen were laughing over a puzzle they couldn't quite finish. No, he said. I think it was one of your better decisions. Nora raised an eyebrow. I'll remind you that you almost didn't come. You definitely will, she laughed. I absolutely will. Sometimes kindness doesn't arrive as a grand rescue. Sometimes it's a friend refusing to let someone spend another Friday alone. Sometimes it's a stranger sharing a crowded table instead of asking someone else to move. Sometimes it's a manager willing to admit she's been wrong, and sometimes it's simply making room for another person in your life one ordinary day at a time. Comment, kindness still exists if you believe even one good act can change someone's life. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and share it with someone who still believes kindness matters. Life rarely gives us perfect timing. It gives us imperfect moments, unexpected meetings, and quiet chances to treat each other with a little more understanding. More often than we realize, those small acts of kindness become the beginning of a better chapter.